Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Sethum and welcome back to another Conan Exiles video. This is a bit of a video that is quite different to what I normally tend to do on this channel, and I am going to be talking about some of the changes coming to Conan Exiles, especially those regarding to the thralls and the new things that will be obviously taking place with regards to the thralls. Obviously there's quite a few changes. Some of them I agree with, some of them I think should be reconsidered and looked at, and obviously this has caused a bit of a commotion in the Conan Exiles community. I see why the devs are doing it. I understand the reason behind it. I do think some of them are initially good ideas but really need to be looked at. And normally I don't do these kind of videos on my channel. I don't cover the news for Ark Survival Evolved or Conan Exiles or now Raid Shadow Legends and stuff like that. That's for other channels to do. I don't like to do that. I like to make guides and help people in the community, and this is what this channel is all about. This is what I like to focus on, purely on that. So before I get into it, I'm going to start with a topic made by another YouTuber. Now this YouTuber, and I'm gonna name it, it's referring to one of the videos that Firespark81 put out. And before I actually get into it, really important right here is I really like his content. He is an amazing YouTuber. He puts out some really good content, really helpful, really useful. It's just me being picky with some of the stuff that he showed and illustrated, and that's pretty much it. It's basically one of those things where he illustrated certain things and talked about the changes in the mechanics, and what he illustrated I feel was not necessarily accurate. And the older players and the more regular players for Conan Exiles will know exactly what I will be referring to. And once again, I am not having to dig at him by any means. This is just to show the correct information with regards to the topic itself. I do agree with a lot of the stuff he says, not with all of it. For the most of it, it's just me being picky and obviously wanting to show the correct stuff. Now, I know he's got a lot of subscribers, and I'm not going into any, I don't know, battle or rage or with him. I'm not even bothered with it. I just aim to purely show the correct illustration of what he was trying to say, and that's that. It's just that simple, right? So he was talking about the thrall cap, and this is what this video is going to be about, because this is one of those things that can be good for the game or game breaking for the game. Now in this video he had two walls, and I will put pictures up of the two walls and the thralls and doing a comparison and explaining why he was of agreement with the changes, but the illustrations in that was not accurate. In that on official servers there is actually a limitation to where you can put your thrall and how close you can place another thrall next to it. On single player you can pretty much stack up thralls on top of each other. So over here I have recreated the wall that he had, which was 10 foundations long and 2 high. It's 3 in some places, but I wanted to keep it straight. So as you can see, I placed a thrall in the center. Now there are several issues with that illustration. For a start, he has the fence in front of the thralls, and if you're going to use archers, there'll be a problem, which I'll show later on. I did put 2 foundations at the back with the intention of placing chests on them and having backup thralls in case things go wrong. I think I might not necessarily need that. But over here, for example, these fences in front right here, they are an obstacle, and the AI of the thrall does not know how to shoot over it. So if it doesn't matter if you play in PvE, PvP, because on PvE you will have purges that will come from the outside. Unless you have a massive base, then you'll have to deal with them on the inside. But they will not be able to shoot over that, and I'll show you that in a bit. Now notice that he has the thralls placed close to each other. It does not allow me to do that. It's basically roughly about a foundation distance if you center your initial thrall with the center of the foundation that you're placing it on. So it's roughly, I would say, a foundation and a half or 2 foundations distance that you can place a thrall. 2 foundations if you place that thrall at the initial thrall at the edge of that foundation. or a foundation distance if you place it in the center of the foundation, as you can see right here. Now, my server settings are identical to those of the official server settings because I agreed with it. I thought it fit perfectly, and this thrall is really annoying because he's wanting to shoot the vultures, which is not what I want him to do. So that is the distance where it will allow you. Now, the thing is, you kind of want, even with the changes, you want your thralls aggro and damage circles to overlap if you're going to protect your base from both other players as well as the purges, right? And I'll show you some stuff over here. Now, these are things that I've discovered by playing the games, and as I said, this is one of those things that I think will be useful for both PvP as well as PvE. So if you look at distance, this is where or how far you can space them apart. In single player, you are allowed to pretty much stack your thralls on top of each other, so to speak, you know, because there aren't any other players and buildings that the game will have to load, so it won't affect performance. Whereas on servers, there have to be certain limitations, especially for servers that will have, let's say, for argument purposes, 30 to potentially 50 players per server. If everybody starts building massive bases and stacking thralls on top of each other, there will be massive performance issues, potentially even crashing the server. So this is one of those limitations that the devs have put into play. Now, this is done as I'm recording it on my personal server, where I've kept the exact same settings as with the official servers. So this is where the difference is. Now let's get into what happens if your thralls need to defend your base from either another player or from creatures wanting to get into your base at purge times. So I'm going to start off by here. We're going to spawn in something simple, nothing too big, because I want to show you what happens if you have the fence in front of your archers. Now bear in mind that most walls will be taller than this, so that means your archer will be firing downwards, right? You can already see where I'm going with this. This is a bit of a problem because the fence is actually an obstacle. The AI does not know how to get around the obstacle, so it's going to have a difficult time firing down. I would say that, just a rough estimate, an average, I'd say it's probably 5 tall that most buildings will have, most bases will have in terms of walls, because you want it to look like a fortress, you know. So this is only 2 tall, so if it starts firing down, as you can see, the AI does not know what to do. It wants to engage, but it's unable to do so because of the foundation. Now if I move, because of the foundation, because of the fence, now if I move farther away, they cannot fire still because there's an obstacle in the way, and the AI, although it wants to, and it has been triggered to defend your base, it wants to get involved but cannot do that because of the obstacle in the way. Now if I move this way, as you can see, I'm a fair distance away, they can actually start firing at it. But if I return close to the wall again, this becomes a weakness. Now I'm showing you this because I don't I don't want people to, especially new players in the game, to actually start putting fencing up and then end up in a purge situation where their thralls cannot defend the base because there's an obstacle in the way. And this is one of the things I wanted to point out, as well as the spacing issue. And of course, this is just simply for accuracy purposes. I'm quite anal about being accurate in my illustrations. Now over here, as you can see, I've got the exact same layout. I've just taken down the fences in front of them. I'm going to do the exact same test and show you what happens without them, and at what distance the thralls will be able to use their abilities as archers to shoot down on things. Now do bear in mind that they are on a foundation, and there is a certain bit of that obstacle being in the way, as the foundation will have a hitbox. So that means if there's an obstacle in the way, they won't be able to fire at whatever target it is. So as you can see right here, I've got this AI to aggro on me. The thralls have aggroed, but because I'm too close to the wall, the thralls aren't able to shoot. So let's slowly move away and see what happens. As you can see, now they're able to actually engage with the target. There is a certain distance from the edge where they're able to shoot, and eventually they will kill that thrall. We're just going to wait for it, kind of show you, let them do their thing. And there we go. That's pretty much it. They should return pretty much close to their original spot. It won't be perfect, but this is how the game mechanics work with regards to thralls. Now, in this next section, and as I've said, right, very important, I am not criticizing Firespark81. I am not disrespecting what he said. He has some very valid points in those videos that he's made, especially the one with regards to the thrall changes. I do agree with the changes. I just don't agree with some of the proposed ideas by the developers and even by Firespark with regards to the changes. I think there's a better way of doing it and a better way of looking at it with the end purpose of improving the overall game's performance. On the topic of Firespark, I really respect him as a content creator. He makes amazing content. I am not having a go at him. I just want to add to what he's done for the purposes of accuracy and helping out the new players in Conan Exiles. My aim, the aim for this channel, has always been and will always be to help out the new players, even the ones that just get or pick up the game. This is what I'm about. This is why I am so specific on accuracy, especially when I decide to illustrate something. Now, let's go into some changes, and I'm gonna pretty much put my thoughts on to what changes will take places, my opinions based on my experience of the game and other games, and what I think would work best, what I worry about, and so on. So the very first thing with regards to the changes coming to the thralls is the thrall limit. I'm not quite sure what the number was exactly, but I believe it was somewhere around 50-55 thralls per clan if the clan has one player, and then it gets an additional 5 thralls per member of the clan. Now, thralls obviously refers to followers, because this will affect followers. So there can be thralls, it can be creatures that you use as pets. So any pet that will follow you about and get involved in combat, basically. Alright, it does not affect the thralls that you place inside your craftables. This is specifically the thralls that you place down with the intention of using as combat. So this will be dancers, archers, fighters, any form of pet, tigers, elephants, and so on and so forth, right? There's a, I think, 55 limit per clan. I think that limit is too low. I would say that it should be a bit higher, maybe somewhere closer to the 100 range. Now, why do I say that? Do bear in mind that Conan Exiles is one of those games that actually has no limitation to how many placeables you can put down with regards to building your base. And by that I mean you can place endless items down in your base. There's no cap there whatsoever. It does not tell you that you're going to run out of space, right? Now, this is a problem for several reasons. One, if people in multiple clans build humongous bases, this will affect server performance. This was an issue with Ark Survival Evolved. That's why Ark Survival Evolved has a cap limit on the placeables within a certain range. That's how the developers at Wildcard found a way around it. You can still build massive bases, but there is a certain limitation. Now, do imagine that on the same map, multiple tribes, multiple clans will end up building large bases. They are still in the game, and if both of them or all the clans are logged in and around the base, that is going to mean that the server will have to load up all of those bases, which will then end up causing lag and performance issues with regards to the game, meaning it will pretty much affect your experience of the game. Now, with regards to Conan Exiles, there is no limitation. That means people have built humongous bases, ridiculously large bases, right? On both PvP and PvE servers, you'll have to defend your bases not just from other players, but from purges, right? The way to do that is by having companions and pets that you place down to defend your base. If you bring down the cap on those defenses to a very small number like 50, 55, even 60, you're gonna severely affect that clan's ability to defend their base from the purges and other players if you're talking PvP. With this, what I'm trying to say is that if they want to increase that, I agree with the cap limit on the thralls, because you see Ark does have a limit with regards to how many dinos you can have, with regards to how many creatures you can have in your base, and of course per clan, so there is a limitation there, and the game should have had this from the get-go, right? This is all to do with server performance, and obviously the better a server performs, the better the overall experience that the player will have. But this limit should also be placed on the items and placeables that you can put in your base. If you end up having multiple clans on the same servers with ginormous bases, of course that is also going to affect that experience, because the game will have to have them loaded up, even if it's in the background, because no players are around it. When players are around the giant bases, they will have to be fully loaded in, and they will affect how that server performs. This is my reason behind it. This is the way I look at it. Now, imagine having a massive base and only, let's say, a maximum of 100 thralls to defend it, spaced out between them. That's going to be a bit of a problem, right? This is why there should also be a cap limit. It does also affect the server performance. Now, with regards to reducing the thralls, the other issue that I see is, let's talk about archers, and this is specifically archers. The idea behind putting archers on walls is so that you have a defense on your walls firing down at your enemies. If you reduce the amount of thralls that you can put down in your base, then you really want to increase the aggro circle and damage circle of those thralls so that you can have them overlapping each other. That way it would make your base defense more effective, because multiple thralls will be firing at a target. And so by increasing the range at which they can shoot and attack your targets for archers, which makes lots of sense because they are long distance fighters, would then definitely go hand in hand with the reduction in the thrall limit. This is my personal opinion. Now, this used to be an issue on Ark servers where people would build defensive towers and cake them with turrets, to the point where that tower could not be attacked because there was so much that the server had to load in just for that tower alone that it would lag the hell out of the server, making those towers indestructible. So the devs at Wildcard ended up putting a limit per turret. So you see, this is what you want to overcome, but you don't want to break the game to a point where you have these tools, these thralls, you can use them for defense, but you don't have enough of them, and they will also be inefficient at defending your base. Now, the increase of aggro and range should only be applied to archers. They are archers, they're meant to fight at a distance, and so that would actually give the archer thralls some functionality. I do not agree. Now, Forest Park said something about siege weapons and something like that. For a start, I do not agree with siege weapons being put on walls unless you can place a thrall in it. To me, a siege weapon working by itself without some sort of thrall or something does not make sense unless there's a player or a thrall actually working it, supposedly, right? So I don't agree with that. It's kind of like a turret system with Ark, but the difference between Conan Exiles and Ark is Ark, in terms of storyline, does have high-tech stuff in its lore. Conan does not. So automated siege weapons should not be a thing in the game unless it's controlled by a player or a thrall. Full stop. That's just my opinion. That should not exist in the game, should not even be considered. The other thing, right, and I agree, and I've wanted it for quite a while, never said it, is with the thralls having a leveling up system. Now, I like that idea, I really do. What I do worry about is the stat attribution points and how they will be put into specific stats, right? It's all automated. It's a gamble. It's the system they're proposing is pretty much random. The AI of the game decides to randomly attribute those points into specific or random attributes. Now, I like it and I don't like it. I worry about that system simply because I think the game can become would make the game a lot more grindier. The game itself, as it is fairly grindy, and if you want to get those really good thralls, you'll end up going through multiple thralls until you get those decent thralls, only to lose them to some bug or another player or something stupid like that. And I don't agree with that. When you spend that much time trying to get those thralls, those really good thralls, to lose them to something silly, I feel like is a bit disheartening, a bit disappointing. So that is one of my worries. I mean, if it's done right, it could work, but it's, you know, you want to make the game enjoyable and fun, not just a grind fest. There's so many things that you need to grind for in this game. It should not just be about grinding, because then you leave no room for the fun bits. And to me, it just feels like a bit of a gambling system, which I don't necessarily like. This is just my personal opinion. I'm not much of a gambler, and to me it's not appealing. Now, what they could have done is, for example, or they could give the thrall a higher percentage of getting those points put in specific stats based on what those thralls are meant to be. So an archer would have more chances of getting those stats put into elements that affect its ability to be a good archer. Equally speaking, if you take an archer and use them as a combat thrall, a sword fighter thrall, for example, then it should then be put, or have a higher chance of having those points put into stats that affect the melee combat. That would make more sense. I don't know if this is what they're doing, but that's basically the way I think it would work best in terms of the game. So whatever you use that thrall, that's where it will have the most chance of getting the points, regardless of what it is. Just a thought, this is just my opinion. That way, there's also still an element of uncertainty as to where the points would go, but it's more likely to go into something that may be useful. You still don't have control over it, and I do agree with that, but then it makes more sense. So that way you would be leveling and grinding up thralls for specific tasks, but you still don't have full control over it, so you cannot max out, or there's a very little chance of maxing out a thrall in a specific area, if that makes sense. Also, while I'm on the topic of leveling up, in the examples that were shown in the videos and live streams by Funcom, I think that the examples shown there that were leveled up had far too much health. You do not need that much health. If they were to put that into the game and that were to be a thing, I think it would mess up the balancing of the game. As it currently stands, from my opinion, I think they have reached a perfect balance where the thrall has enough hit points to get you through a dungeon, but where you still need to manage the health of that thrall, so you need to constantly heal your thrall as it's doing what it's doing. You don't need more hit points on the thralls. I think that is the wrong way of doing it, and they should not hit much harder than they currently do. Yes, there should be an element of leveling up your thralls. Maybe start them off with lower HP and lower damage, and level them up to increase their damage and give them some attributes and stats that would benefit them. But they should not be by far better than what the game currently has in the game as thralls. That is my honest opinion. Otherwise, you then create a bit of an imbalance. I mean, thralls are an essential mechanic to the game. You can take them into dungeons, you can use them into dungeons, and as it currently stands, the most recent dungeon does actually require you to have a thrall if you want a easy run. Now, you can try and solo this, but that's fine. However, even by having a thrall, you still need to manage that thrall's survivability, which does add to the challenge of the game, but it does also get the dungeon to become more fun. If you overpower your thralls, you'll just let them do the thing and you just sit back and not do anything. And this is my worry with it. It's just I hope they don't do that, because otherwise they're creating an imbalance where the thralls are stupid DOP and you don't do much of anything. You just let them loose and let them tear the dungeon apart. Where it's currently at, I like that there is a bit of difficulty, and I like the challenge of having to manage both the NPCs that I'm fighting as well as my thralls' health. And finally, the one that has caused the most uprise in the community, and this is how they're going about with the changes to the thralls. Now, as far as I understand it, there's a thing that will happen once the patch goes live where the players will be allowed to pick up the thralls and put them back in their inventory. However, they'll have to do this every, I don't know, I think 5 minutes, 1 minute. I'm not sure what the time is. I don't agree with it. Yes, give the players a chance to pick up the thralls and save them for later. But the way I would have gone about it is, before the patch goes live, give them a 2-week notice or time period or grace period in which they can thin out the thralls however way they want to. And of course this means let them pick them up, put them in their inventory and store them in vaults and storage boxes. So give them that option, release that option to do that in the game 2 weeks before the patch goes live. Then when the patch goes live, start with the countdown timers until the cap limit for the tribe has been reached. I think that's the best way of doing it. As it currently stands in the game, you cannot pick up a thrall or a pet once you have placed it down. I think that part of the game, that option of the game where you are allowed to pick up a NPC that you picked up, that you placed down a while ago, should be released 2 weeks before to give the players that time to also play the game, but also do the thrall management and thin out the thralls. And this is just a suggestion. I mean, there's a lot of suggestions in this video for what I think would make the upcoming content a lot more fun, a lot more playable, a lot more logical in my sense. And there's a big one right here. This is I suppose a personal request, right? I would like to have the ability to actually name your thralls just like you do with your other pets. It would be amazing if you could give them a name. I mean, keep the thrall class name as a sub-name to help people understand or know what class it's part of, but also allow them to name their thralls. This could also make for some very interesting plays where, for example, a starting out player could get a low level thrall, for example, and name it something of a higher tier. For example, say they get a level 1 or tier 1 Tefari fighter. They rechange that name to a relic hunter treasure seeker. So that could be a thing that PvP players could use to mock their way out of situations, to bluff their way out of situations in terms of PvP combat, if that makes sense. But equally speaking, it would also allow for more customizability in terms of gameplay. I think this is something that I would like to see, and it would be fun to play around with and throw out ideas with regards to names and just give them funny names. And with that, I'm going to bring this video to an end. It's been long enough. Before I actually do go into the outro, I'm going to again specify, because I want everyone to know and understand that I have not intended to have a poke or a dig at Firespark. He's an amazing YouTuber. I am subscribed to him. I follow his videos. I watch his videos religiously. I like the content he does. He has some great ideas in terms of tutorials and guides. He's an amazing YouTuber, and I actually really like his channel very, very much. This was just to point out some inaccuracies and correct on top of them, make some corrections to the inaccuracies that he used to illustrate his point of view. That's all. The reason I chose to do this is because there will be people that will just be starting out in the game, and they may end up trying to do what he's done or mimic what he's done, and then find themselves in a situation where they might be raided by players, or they'll be in a purge and the thralls will be ineffective. That's just pretty much it. Equally speaking, I do know and realize that everyone's got their own opinions. This is just a list of my opinions and what I think would make the update to be far more efficient and better in terms of improving the game, the gameplay, the experience overall. I do realize that everyone has their own thoughts, so if you want to share them down below, please do so. I encourage you to do that. There are a lot of great ideas coming from people. Don't go into an all-out war with each other, arguments and stuff like that. I don't want to see that in the comments. If I see that happening, I will start banning people. This is not what this channel is about. I do not want to add to the drama. There's enough drama on YouTube, and my channel is not about that. So with that being said, do disagree with each other, do express your opinions, but be polite and respectful to each other, and don't get into a petty, rude argument and being nasty to each other. I am not going to accept that on this channel, and that's just the way I like to roll things. This is a channel that aims at building a community of people that like to help each other. With that being said and done, that is it for this video, folks. I do hope that you have enjoyed it, and if you have, please don't forget to support me in the channel by hitting that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already for more similar content from myself, and if you have just subscribed, why not check out some of my other videos and guides here on this channel. Who knows, you might just enjoy them. And don't forget to hit that bell icon so that you get notified when I upload new videos and content to the channel. Also, for those interested, you can always find me on the Sethum Discord. Links to this, of course, you can find down below in the video's description, as well as in a pinned comment from myself. Until next time, stay safe, folks.